Tecumseh's War. Tecumseh's War was a pivotal conflict between Native American tribes and the United States in the early 19th century, occurring as part of the broader struggle between the indigenous peoples of the American Midwest and the encroaching settlers backed by the U.S. government. The war was named after Tecumseh, a prominent Shawnee leader who, along with his brother Tenskwatawa, sought to unite disparate Native American tribes into a confederation that could resist the westward expansion of American settlers. To understand the complexities of this conflict, it is essential to examine the cultural, political, and military factors that led to the war, as well as its broader significance in American history. The roots of Tecumseh's War can be traced back to the Treaty of Greenville in 1795, which ended the Northwest Indian War and established a boundary between Native American lands and U.S. territory in the Ohio Valley. However, this treaty was largely unfavorable to the Native Americans, who were forced to cede large tracts of land to the United States. Over the following decades, American settlers continued to push westward, disregarding the boundaries established by the treaty and encroaching on Native American lands. This encroachment, coupled with the U.S. government's efforts to assimilate Native Americans into Euro-American society, led to growing resentment among the tribes. Tecumseh and Tenskwatawa were born into a world where their people were increasingly marginalized and dispossessed of their lands. Tecumseh, born around 1768, grew up witnessing the devastation wrought by the American Revolution and the subsequent wars between Native Americans and the U.S. government. His brother Tenskwatawa, born in 1775, became a spiritual leader, known as the Prophet, who preached a return to traditional Native American ways and rejection of European American influence. Tenskwatawa's religious movement gained a significant following among various tribes, and his teachings emphasized the need for unity and resistance against American expansion. As tensions between the U.S. and Native American tribes continued to escalate, Tecumseh emerged as a charismatic and skilled leader, determined to forge a broad alliance of tribes from the Great Lakes to the Gulf of Mexico. His vision was one of pan-Indian unity, in which the tribes would collectively resist further encroachments on their lands. Tecumseh's diplomatic efforts took him across vast distances, as he sought to rally support from tribes that had historically been rivals. He argued that only by standing together could the Native American nations hope to defend their sovereignty and way of life. Tecumseh's campaign for unity was not only a response to American expansion, but also to the broader geopolitical context of the early 19th century. The United States, still a relatively young nation, was engaged in a series of conflicts with European powers, particularly Britain and France. Tecumseh sought to leverage these international rivalries to his advantage, hoping to secure British support for his confederation. The British, who still maintained a presence in Canada, saw the potential for using Native American resistance as a way to weaken the United States and protect their own interests in North America. Tecumseh's diplomatic overtures to the British were met with cautious support, as the British were wary of provoking open conflict with the U.S. at that time. The immediate catalyst for Tecumseh's War came in 1809, when the Treaty of Fort Wayne was signed. In this treaty, a group of Native American leaders ceded over 3 million acres of land to the United States. However, Tecumseh and many others vehemently opposed the treaty, arguing that the leaders who signed it did not have the authority to represent all the tribes affected by the land cession. Tecumseh traveled to various villages, urging them to reject the treaty and resist further land sales to the Americans. He famously confronted William Henry Harrison, the governor of the Indiana Territory and a key figure in American expansion efforts, warning him that the Native American nations would not stand idly by as their lands were taken. Harrison, however, was determined to quell the growing resistance, and tensions between the two sides came to a head in 1811. Tecumseh, who was away on a diplomatic mission to the southern tribes, left his brother Tenskwatawa in charge of their base of operations at Prophetstown, a settlement near the confluence of the Tippecanoe and Wabash rivers in present-day Indiana. Harrison, seeking to preempt a larger conflict, led an expeditionary force of U.S. soldiers and militia to confront the Native American Confederation at Prophetstown. On the night of November 6, 1811, Harrison's forces encamped near the settlement, and the following morning, Tenskwatawa's warriors launched a pre-dawn attack on the American camp. The Battle of Tippecanoe, as it came to be known, was a hard-fought engagement, but the Native American forces were ultimately driven back, and Prophetstown was burned to the ground. The defeat at Tippecanoe was a significant blow to the Native American Confederation, as it not only weakened their military strength but also damaged Tenskwatawa's reputation as a spiritual leader. Many of his followers began to lose faith in his prophetic abilities, and the unity that Tecumseh had worked so hard to build started to unravel. Despite the setback at Tippecanoe, Tecumseh continued his efforts to rally Native American resistance. In 1812, the United States declared war on Britain, initiating the War of 1812. Tecumseh saw this as an opportunity to renew his alliance with the British and intensify the struggle against American expansion. He and his followers joined forces with British troops in Canada, participating in several key battles during the war. Tecumseh's leadership and military acumen earned him the respect of both his Native American allies and British commanders. He played a crucial role in the defense of Canada against American invasions and was instrumental in several British victories. However, the tide of the war eventually turned against Tecumseh and his allies. In 1813, U.S. forces under the command of William Henry Harrison launched an invasion of Canada. Tecumseh and his warriors fought alongside the British at the Battle of the Thames on October 5, 1813. In this decisive engagement, Tecumseh was killed, and with his death, the Native American resistance movement he had led began to collapse. Without Tecumseh's leadership and vision, the confederation he had built disintegrated, and many of the tribes were forced to sign treaties ceding their lands to the United States. Tecumseh's war and the larger conflict of the War of 1812 had profound consequences for the Native American peoples of the Midwest. The dream of a united pan-Indian confederation that could resist American expansion was shattered, and the U.S. government intensified its efforts to remove Native Americans from their ancestral lands. Over the following decades, the policy of Indian removal, most notably embodied in the Indian Removal Act of 1830, led to the forced relocation of thousands of Native Americans to territories west of the Mississippi River. This era, marked by the Trail of Tears and other forced migrations, represented the culmination of the process of dispossession that Tecumseh had fought so hard to prevent. Tecumseh's legacy, however, endured long after his death. He became a symbol of Native American resistance and a reminder of the devastating impact of U.S. expansion on indigenous peoples. His vision of pan-Indian unity and his efforts to defend Native American sovereignty are remembered as one of the most significant attempts by Native Americans to resist the pressures of colonization. While Tecumseh's war ultimately ended in defeat, his leadership and determination continue to inspire those who seek to understand and honor the history and struggles of Native American nations. The significance of Tecumseh's war also extends beyond the Native American context. The conflict, and the broader War of 1812 in which it was embedded, helped to shape the emerging identity of the United States. The war contributed to the rise of American nationalism and the belief in manifest destiny, the idea that the United States was destined to expand across the continent. For many Americans, the defeat of Tecumseh and the British was seen as a triumph of the young nation's ability to assert itself on the global stage. The war also elevated figures like William Henry Harrison, who would later become the 9th President of the United States, largely on the strength of his reputation as a military leader during the conflict. At the same time, the war revealed the deep divisions within American society regarding the treatment of Native Americans. While many settlers and politicians viewed the removal of Native Americans as necessary for the nation's progress, others, including some military leaders and policymakers, recognized the moral and ethical challenges posed by the destruction of Native American societies. These debates would continue to shape U.S. policy towards Native Americans throughout the 19th century. In conclusion, Tecumseh's War was a critical moment in the history of Native American resistance to U.S. expansion. Led by Tecumseh and his brother Tenskwatawa, the war represented the last major effort by Native Americans to unite and defend their lands in the face of overwhelming pressure from American settlers and the U.S. government. While the war ultimately ended in defeat for the Native American Confederation, Tecumseh's legacy as a visionary leader and symbol of resistance endures. The war also played a significant role in shaping the identity and policies of the United States as it continued its expansion across the continent, with lasting consequences for the Native American peoples whose lands and cultures were profoundly affected by this